I've debated posting this for a while, mainly because I'm not a writer, and it's a long story. Apologies in advance for the length. This happened to me and my friend Sam 3 winters ago. We liked exploring nature and walking around outside, and our friends had recently introduced us to this beautiful place in Wisconsin that we have visited with them 3 or 4 times before. Grant Park, for anyone familiar with southeastern Wisconsin parks. Every time we had gone with them, it had been a pleasant trip. We walked around, got to see some beautiful views of Lake Michigan, sat in crooks of trees and talked about books and games and other things. We had been starting a new game of Hunter the Darkness, a tabletop RPG game like Dungeons and Dragons, and we were using the park for scenic inspiration. It was great! For the purpose of storytelling, she and I are both 5'2" or 5'3" females. The first time she and I went alone, we went around dusk to take some pictures that we could Photoshop for the game. This park is massive, and there are many bridges, footpaths, and winding roads throughout. We were walking over a bridge that sat against one of the roads, with dense woods on either side. As we were crossing, a car drives by and rolls down the window, and some guy leans out and yells, "Hey!" at us. We were both startled and jumped, but dismissed them and continued walking across the bridge. Less than a minute later, the same car comes driving back the other direction, and this time the driver's side window rolls down, and the driver, another male, calls out, "Hey ladies, come here." We picked up our pace. The car drove away, and right as we were about to hit the end of the bridge, we see the car come at us again from the original direction. We then book it up into the trees and up the hill, and we hear the car stop and the 2 men start yelling for us. We continued running and hid in the dark for 15 or so minutes until they left, and we ran back to our car and left. You would think we would avoid the park after that, but once we had gotten out of there and properly warmed over a hot chocolate from Perkins, we had a good laugh over having been so scared. We went back to the park with our male friends a few times, and nothing even remotely scary had happened, so she and I decided to go back, just the 2 of us, again. Sam and I often spent our afternoons and early evenings exploring the outside, hiking, geocaching, just sitting outside in parks and talking, so we just decided to add it to our repertoire. We headed back around dusk again, and with the camera to take more pictures, especially since we hadn't gotten the shots we wanted to the first time. Now, obviously, looking back on this, we both feel incredibly foolish having gone back alone and around the same time and at the same place. But, as I had said, we had gone a few more times with just our male friends, and even then, we had just 1 male with us, and nothing had happened, so we thought we were just being skittish. Anyways, we went back, and we were about to walk over the same bridge when a car rolls by, and, as you guessed, the window rolls down and some guy just yells out some random noise. And this time we don't wait for them to drive around. We duck into the woods and start walking back toward the pier. We figured we'd abandon the other photo spot and just explore the pier. Take some lake shots. Not really what we were looking for, but we figured if we made it in time for the sunset, which was almost all the way down by now, we could take some nice pictures over the lake, just for fun. The way that the pier is set up is that there is a long thin road from the top of a giant grass hill curving down and into the parking lot. The pier is at the end of the right side of the parking lot, about 200 yards away. If you walked from near the pier down to the right side of the parking lot, there was a little bridge that led into a development with a tennis court that sat next to the preserve. So we began walking down the road to the lake, when the same car from before drives down to the parking lot by the pier. They didn't say anything as they drove past, but we still decided to slow down and decide whether or not we wanted to continue down by the pier. The car turned around in the parking lot and came back up the road. The car reached where we had stopped, so we immediately turned and started walking down the hill. All of the windows rolled down, and we saw that there were 4 guys and 1 girl in the car. They yelled, "Hello," and Sam and I turned and waved. Then one of them said, "Oh, hey, you're cute." And the others joined in. "Hey, yeah, wait for us." Now mind you, we are only 2 small females, but we are also super bundled up in large winter coats and hats. You could barely see any of our faces or our shapes, so they didn't really have a lot to base it on. We'd been ignoring them, and we hear someone yell, "We're coming back for you!" as they start driving up the hill. Sam and I decide not to take any chances and start running down the hill. We hear hooting and hollering and see them disappear over the top of the hill. We start running towards the bridge because it was the closest, and once you've gotten over the bridge to the left, there was a concrete deck with a drop off to a ramp about 5 feet tall, so that if you got off the bridge and jumped down right away, you'd be at the bottom of the ramp and couldn't be seen from the other side if you ducked down, which is exactly what we did. We hear the car speed back down the hill, and 4 doors open and close as they all start screaming and laughing. "Come here, girls. We'll be nice. We just want to play." Most of them took off down the pier, but 2 of them stayed behind, and we could make out bits and pieces of what they were saying. "Where do you think they went?" "I don't know. We'll find them." Sam and I are huddled and freaked out, and once it has been silent near the bridge for a while, we decide to peek out to see if the other 2 have also left so we could sneak back up the hill or make a break for it somewhere. We peek over, and there's a guy on the other end of the bridge, and he clearly sees us. "Over here!" he screams to his buddies and starts running across the bridge to us. We take off toward the development, running around the side of the tennis court while being chased by 3 of the guys. Only one of them is very close to us, about 30 feet, but the rest were catching up faster than we would have liked. We took a quick turn between 2 houses in the subdivision, and we luckily never saw them from that point on. We got back to our car by walking through the forest preserve incredibly slowly, dashing across roads, terrified out of our minds. We left that night and called our friends we normally went to the preserve with. From then on out, they insisted on accompanying us anytime we went there. This is actually my first post on Reddit. I've always read the stories in the sub and promised myself I was going to tell some of my own here, but I'm a procrastinator. At the time of this story, I was 18 years old. I'm 22 now, so back then I was a freshman in college. I was going to a college in a city that was 2 hours away from home, but the city is much larger, so, more creeps. I honestly don't scare easily. I'm a horror movie fanatic. I have an occult obsession, books on demonology. Basically, I'm a strange girl. But anyway, even though I'm an introvert, I make friends very easily. I'm a good listener, very laid back. So I made some really good friends at university. We all have a lot of similar interests. All stoners. All good friends, still even now. Obviously, you get in a lot of trouble trying to smoke in your dorm room, so we had to walk off campus and find places to smoke. We finally found a sweet little gem not even a 5-minute walk from campus. We find a deserted parking lot that cabbies sometimes park in. Behind the lot is a long fence with a hole somebody obviously cut out, and behind the fence are some abandoned train tracks. The tracks are in horrible shape, but it worked just fine for a secluded spot for us to hang. So that was our smoke spot from that point on. One night, we were doing our usual smoke, listening to music and talking on the tracks. Then we get the bright idea to walk further down the tracks. We didn't know where the tracks went or anything like that, so we were just walking really far down. On either sides of the tracks are wooded areas, so we didn't know where we were going, but we were enjoying the walk either way. We get a good distance from where we started, and decide to stop and spark up again. We were just joking and laughing and puffing, and it seems we all knew something wasn't right at the time. We looked up and saw 3 people walking towards us in the distance. We all looked up, staring and squinting at them. I didn't know about the others, but I got a really bad feeling immediately. From what I could make out, it was 2 guys and 1 girl. They were a really far distance away. What really freaked me out was how stiff they were walking. They all walked beside one another in a line. They weren't talking to each other or joking like we were. They all seemed to be walking to the same rhythm but at a steady pace. They were all in black, so my friend Jojo calls out to them and waves. He just said hello. They were looking straight ahead, but didn't even flinch. Nothing in response, so we all look at one another. We were confused and scared. They picked up their pace, and they were getting closer. I could honestly sense the fear on us. I looked at them again, and they seemed to be walking much, much faster towards us now. I was thinking to myself, am I fucking tweaking or something? Then I was thinking, no, we're not gonna be this fucking gullible. So I turn around and tell my friends to get the hell out of here. My friends said nothing. They all turned around with me, and we started walking back to where we came from. I looked back, and they were power walking towards us. So I basically break into a half sprint, and my friends follow suit. Like I said, these tracks were in horrible shape, but you would have thought me and my friends knew every crevice with the way we were maneuvering. My heart was beating so fast, and I was tired, but I couldn't stop. I was the most out of shape compared to my friends, but my adrenaline was really pumping hard that night. I was the first to reach the hole in the gate, and I slipped through and held the flap open so that all of my friends could slip right through with no trouble. I looked back towards the wooded area and they were standing in it. It was very dark and hard to see them because they had all black on, but I could make out their silhouettes. They were just standing still, staring at us, watching us. I pointed it out to my friends, and we all ran back to the dorms. When we got back, we were all shaking, not only from the scare, but from how cold it had been outside. I have really, really bad anxiety, so I just went back to my room and had a panic attack. I was so scared. Obviously, we never smoked there again, and it scared us so bad that we never brought it up again after that night. I'm a long-time lurker, first-time poster, like most of the people who post on here are. I finally decided it's about time I share one of my stories. I have more if anyone wants to hear. Any names mentioned are fabricated. This happened about 2 years ago when I first started university. I went to a pretty nice school about an hour away from home. I've since dropped out, but I really enjoyed my time there. Of course, when starting a new school, you're bound to meet a few creepers. This guy was no exception. During the first week of school, they get you acquainted to campus through freshman orientation. This first week is full of seminars regarding your major, giant meet and greets with people in your major path, and huge parties held by the RAs of every dorm on campus. It's pretty popular among upperclassmen to say that you meet nearly 200 people your first week, but only stay friends with about 10. During this week, I met lots of new people from many different places. It was common to add one another to Facebook, so my friend list had noticeably expanded. Many of the people I had met face to face through some of the campus activities, but others were people who were just trying to add the entire freshman class. I accepted friend requests blindly, assuming I had met most of the people who were adding me. I didn't think much of it at the time. After the excitement of being in a new place with new people had died down, I had narrowed down my 10 or so friends from the 200 faces I had just been overwhelmed with. We lived in dorms and quads that were closest to each other, so we spent a lot of time together. We would often meet up to get food with each other and party on the weekends. One day, when we had all met up to go to lunch, I was approached in the cafeteria by a semi-familiar face. He introduced himself as Will, and he said he recognized me from Facebook. He was clearly one of the many faces I had just added to my friends list without a second thought. I played nice and asked how he was, inquired about his major, and asked what dorm he lived in. He told me I should stop by sometime to say hello, but I only agreed to be nice and did not plan on actually visiting this stranger. After our brief conversation, I met back up with my friends and continued my day. After that, Will seemed to appear wherever I was. It started out as simple encounters. Catching a glimpse of him in the library while I was studying, bumping into him at one of the food places on campus, or seeing him waiting in a lecture hall before and after classes. All things that could be passed off as right place, right time. After a grueling exam one morning, I had nested up with a comfy chair with a cup of coffee to wait for a friend of mine. Suddenly, Will approached me out of nowhere. He made himself comfortable next to me, without my invitation, and began to ask me odd questions. One of his questions was regarding whether or not I had any piercings, to which I replied that I did. The one that interested him the most was that I had my belly button pierced. He asked if he could see it, as well as the tattoo on my lower back. I was thoroughly creeped out and did not oblige. I laughed it off as not to offend him, and gave him the benefit of the doubt since he was not from the US. He then began to ask me if I had a boyfriend, where he went to school, so on and so forth. I told him yes, and that my boyfriend at the time went to a state university about 3 hours away, but we kept in constant contact. He seemed disappointed to learn that I was taken, but his questions became more friendly after that. My friend I had been waiting for arrived shortly after, and the two of us left. Will mentioned something about seeing me on Facebook and laughed as we left. I began to tell my friends about our weird conversation, and they agreed that he was a little on the creepy side. Will had started to show up everywhere I went without fail. At every sporting event, he was right in front of me, casting looks over his shoulder. Every time I was in a building on campus, he showed up minutes after I arrived and set himself up with a clear view of me. I had friends who lived in the same dorm as he did, and he always waited in the lobby on days when I came to visit. Despite how many times he tried to stop me to talk, I always waved casually and pretended I was busy and had somewhere to be. And then he started appearing on my Facebook. He started liking all my pictures, but only ones of myself. He commented on all of them, telling me I looked pretty. This was attention I did not desire, considering I had a significant other at the time. He liked all of my updates, all of the links I shared, every single thing I posted. He jumped right on the bandwagon with posts meant to be for my close friends. Nothing was safe from his awkward comments. This continued into the fall, when Halloween rolled around. One of the dorms most of my male friends lived in was having a Halloween party, and my roommate and I were invited. That night, we got prepared and took pictures of each other in our run-of-the-mill, this is the only costume I can really do given my resources, outfits. I constantly have my computer open and running, and I was surprised to see my Facebook message icon flashing. I had one message from Will. In it, he said I looked great in my cast costume. He even went so far as to call me Catwoman, and asked if I would like an escort to the Halloween party at the dorm that night. Now, to put this into perspective, my dorm was on one end of the campus and his was on the other. The dorm where the party was being held was about a 5-minute walk from mine. His offer came off as very strange. I kindly declined, but he told me he would see me there. I showed my roommate the messages, and she told me we didn't have to go. I wasn't going to let it ruin the fun we had in store, so we went anyway. When we arrived, I didn't catch a glimpse of Will. After a few minutes, I did see him come in through the front doors. Immediately I ducked down and hid amongst my friends. A few of them laughed, but most of them knew that Will had been following me and jumped to my aid as they tried to shield me from his view. He was walking around the lobby, looking around frantically for something. Apparently, that something was me. After dodging him for several minutes, he finally found me and tried to casually chat me up, as if he hadn't just been stalking the party for me. He complimented my costume again, and began to make remarks about my physical appearance. I quickly told him I was leaving, to which he offered to walk me home. Instead, I got an upperclassman to walk me back to my dorm. I thanked him profusely. It was after that encounter that I decided it was time to remove Will from my Facebook. His comments had begun to annoy me, and I didn't know if he was using my Facebook to find me every time I left my dorm room. I assumed that would be the last of it. A few days later, I was on my way to class when I noticed Will and a large group of people headed my way. They were all chatting, so I hoped he wouldn't notice me. After I squeezed past them on the path, a familiar voice called out to me. "Hey, wait!" I turned around to face Will, a stern look on his face. "Why did you remove me on Facebook?" I became extremely uncomfortable, and my blood ran cold. I thought he would take the hint if he noticed at all, but confronting me about it in public was a whole new level of creepy. I took a stand, simply stating that he was creeping me out with his weird comments and his constant appearing wherever I was. I told him that I did not want him in my life, and turned to leave. That was when he roughly grabbed my arm and tried to turn me around to face him again. He claimed he wanted to talk it out, but I was furious that he had grabbed me. I ripped my hand away and yelled at him not to touch me, drawing the attention of quite a few people passing by. I told him firmly that he needed to leave me alone, or I would get the campus police involved. He shook his head and walked back to his group of friends. I only saw him a few more times after that. He would always glare at me when I managed to make eye contact with him. After I dropped out, I haven't seen or heard from him again. So Will, let's not meet ever again. Hey guys, it's Blue Spooky here. I just wanted to thank you all very much for watching. This YouTube channel is relatively new, so please be sure to leave a comment if you have any constructive feedback, or if you have anything that you want to see next that you'd rather have me do. And please feel free to send any stories you might want me to read to my email account. Thanks once again for watching, guys. Have a great day.